Imagine sitting in a courtroom watching your own parents, the people who raised you, pay a lawyer thousands of dollars just to take everything you own. Not because you stole from them, not because you hurt them, but because you dared to build a life they couldn't control. My name is Daniel, and this is the story of how my parents tried to bankrupt me in front of a packed courtroom, and how one single question from the judge tore their entire case apart. Stay until the end because that question changed everything. I grew up in a house where love came with conditions. My parents, Robert and Diane, weren't cruel in the obvious way. No shouting, no violence. Their control was quieter than that. It was about ownership. Everything I did belonged to them first. My grades belonged to them. My friendships were screened by them. Even my college major was chosen by them, business, because that's what successful people studied, according to my father. I wanted to study graphic design. I loved it since I was 12 years old, sketching logos on the back of my school notebooks. My father called it a hobby for people who don't want real jobs. I studied business anyway. I graduated. I got a stable office job. Exactly the life they had planned for me. But something in me kept dying a little more every single day. At 26, I finally made a decision that would change everything. I quit my corporate job and started a small design studio from my apartment. I used every dollar of my savings. I worked 16-hour days. And slowly it started working. Clients came in. Contracts got bigger. Within 3 years, my studio was doing better than I ever imagined. 6 figures a year, a small team of 5 people, my name actually meaning something in the industry. My parents were furious. Not proud. Furious. Because in their eyes, I hadn't just built a business. I had proven them wrong. And that, to people like my parents, was unforgivable. It started small. My father would make comments at family dinners. Must be nice playing with colors all day and calling it work. My mother would sigh dramatically whenever my business came up, as if my success embarrassed her somehow. Then came the real request. 2 years into my studio's success, my father called me and asked for a loan. $50,000 to help cover some business debts of his own failing investment company. I said yes. Of course I did. He was my father. 6 months later he asked again. Then again. Within 18 months, I had given my parents almost $200,000. Money I had earned from years of exhausting, sleepless work. I never once asked for a contract. I never once asked for interest. I trusted them completely because they were my parents. Then one day I asked for a simple update, just wanting to know how the investment company was doing since I'd put so much into it. My father's tone changed instantly. That money was a gift, Daniel. Don't act like we owe you something. A gift. $200,000 apparently was just a gift now. I let it go. I didn't want to fight with my own parents over money. But something inside me shifted that day. A small crack that would only grow wider. A year later, my business hit its biggest milestone yet. I landed a contract with a national retail brand, worth nearly $1 million over 3 years. It was the kind of deal that changes a small studio's entire trajectory. I called my parents to share the news, expecting excitement, maybe even pride for once. Instead, my mother asked a question that stopped me cold. So does that mean you can finally pay us back properly for everything we did for you growing up? I was confused. Pay you back for what? She listed things: braces, summer camps, my college tuition, my childhood bedroom furniture. Things every normal parent provides for their child without expecting repayment. But in her mind, apparently, I owed them a debt for simply being raised. I tried to reason with her. I reminded her of the $200,000 I had already given them. Money that was supposed to help their struggling company. She brushed it off instantly. That's completely different, Daniel. That was an investment we were counting on, not charity. 3 weeks later, I received something I never expected in my life. A legal letter. My own parents were suing me. The claim was almost unbelievable. They alleged that the money I had given them wasn't a loan or a gift at all. It was actually their money, taken from a joint family investment fund that I had supposedly mismanaged as a silent partner in my father's company. They claimed I owed them nearly $300,000 in damages, on top of the money already given. It was a complete fabrication. There was no joint fund. There was no partnership agreement. There was nothing, except $200,000 I had personally wired them out of love and trust, and a signature-free relationship built entirely on the assumption that family doesn't need contracts. I quickly learned they weren't just filing a claim. They had hired one of the most aggressive business litigation lawyers in the state, a man named Gregory Hale, known for dragging out cases for years and draining opponents financially until they simply gave up. My parents weren't trying to win a fair case. They were trying to bankrupt me through legal fees alone. I hired my own lawyer, a sharp young attorney named Priya Desai, who had helped a friend of mine through a business dispute before. When I explained the situation to her, she went quiet for a long moment before saying, "This isn't really about the money, is it? This is about control." She was right. My parents didn't need the money. My father's company, despite its struggles, was still afloat. This was punishment for succeeding without their permission, for building something they couldn't take credit for. The case dragged on for 8 months. Depositions, document requests, endless court filings. My parents' lawyer buried my legal team in paperwork designed purely to increase costs. My legal bills climbed past $40,000, and we were still nowhere near trial. During this time, my own family turned against me publicly. My aunts and uncles, cousins, even childhood family friends, most of them took my parents' side without ever asking me a single question. At a cousin's wedding, my own uncle looked at me and said, "How could you do this to your parents after everything they've done for you?" I wanted to scream. I hadn't done anything except build a life through my own effort, and generously help 2 people who now wanted to legally strip me of everything I'd built. But I stayed quiet, because I knew the truth would come out eventually. In the one place where lies don't survive. A courtroom in front of a judge. The day of the trial finally came. The courtroom was packed. My parents had brought nearly a dozen family members to sit behind them, a visible show of support meant to intimidate me. I sat alone at my table with Priya, my heart pounding but strangely calm. I had nothing to hide. They did. Gregory Hale, my parents' lawyer, opened with a dramatic speech about financial betrayal and a son who exploited his own parents' trust for personal business gain. He painted me as a manipulative businessman who had used a fake investment scheme to drain his aging parents' retirement savings. I watched my mother dab fake tears with a tissue as he spoke. My father sat straight-backed, arms crossed, nodding along like a man who fully believed his own lie. Then it was our turn. Priya calmly laid out the actual evidence. Bank transfer records clearly labeled by me as loan to dad and helping with business debt. Text messages where my father directly asked for money, referencing his company's financial troubles, never once mentioning any joint investment fund. Emails where my mother thanked me for bailing them out again. There was no contract. There was no partnership agreement. There was no fund. There was only a son who trusted his parents completely, and 2 parents who were now rewriting history to punish him for succeeding without them. Gregory Hale tried to argue that verbal agreements existed regarding a family investment structure, but he had no documentation to support any of it, nothing except my parents' word. Then the judge, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Judge Elaine Foster, looked directly at my father and asked a single question that silenced the entire courtroom. "Mr. Whitman, if this was truly a formal joint investment fund as you claim, where is the paperwork establishing it? And why does every single message between you and your son refer to this money as help, a loan or a gift, but never once as an investment?" The courtroom went dead silent. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at his lawyer, hoping for rescue. Gregory Hale shuffled through his papers, desperately searching for something that didn't exist. There was no answer, because there was no fund. There never had been. Judge Foster didn't wait long for a response that clearly wasn't coming. She continued, her voice sharp and precise. "I've reviewed every piece of evidence submitted in this case. What I see is a clear, documented pattern of a son voluntarily providing financial assistance to his parents, assistance that was, by every written record, treated as a loan or a gift, not an investment partnership. I see no evidence of any joint fund, any partnership agreement, or any financial structure supporting the plaintiff's claims." She looked directly at my parents. "What concerns me most is the timing of this lawsuit, filed only weeks after the defendant's business achieved significant success. That timing, combined with the complete absence of documentation for a claim this large, raises serious questions about the intent behind this case." My mother's fake tears had disappeared entirely. My father's face had gone pale, his earlier confidence completely drained. Judge Foster ruled in my favor completely. Not only was the lawsuit dismissed, but because the claim was found to have been filed in bad faith, my parents were ordered to cover a significant portion of my legal fees, nearly $30,000. As the ruling was read, I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. I looked over at my parents, half expecting some flicker of shame, some acknowledgement of what they had just done. Instead, my father simply stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked out of the courtroom without a single word. My mother followed, refusing to even look in my direction. That was the last time I saw either of them in person. The lawsuit destroyed what was left of our relationship completely. Word spread through the extended family about what had actually happened in court. The lack of evidence, the judge's pointed question, the dismissal. Slowly, some relatives who had judged me without asking questions began reaching out to apologize. But my parents never did. Not one phone call. Not one message. To this day, months later, there has been complete silence from both of them. Strangely, that silence brought me a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. For most of my life, I had been chasing their approval, bending my choices around their expectations, giving without ever being appreciated. The lawsuit, as painful as it was, finally showed me the truth clearly. My success was never something they wanted to celebrate. It was something they wanted to control, and when they couldn't control it, they tried to take it instead. My business continued growing after the trial. The retail contract I landed right before all of this happened became one of the biggest projects of my career. My team grew from 5 people to 12, and every single milestone since then has felt entirely, completely mine, built without needing anyone's approval. People often ask me if I regret helping my parents financially in the first place. Honestly, I don't. I did it because I loved them, and that love was real, even if it wasn't returned the same way. What I do carry with me now is a simple truth I learned the hard way. Real family doesn't punish you for outgrowing their expectations. Real family doesn't need a lawsuit to remind you where you stand with them. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you the most are the ones you need protection from. And sometimes, the truth only needs one honest question to bring an entire lie crashing down. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to protect yourself from people who were supposed to support you unconditionally, let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you believe justice was served in this courtroom, hit like and share this video so more people can hear this story. See you in the next video with another true story worth telling.